colleague, senior researcher, Catherine Murphy, and a couple of guests, Alison Smith and Sheridan Johnson, who are joining us today from HKS. We call them alumni of the programs, but we're happy they could join us today and give us their insight into their work at HKS and some of their experiences taking the courses. So I'll jump right in. So this is our lovely team here. I'll give you a little bit of a background about Alison and Sheridan. Alison promotes responsible materials selection and education firm-wide at HKS that has managed over 30 sustainability projects totaling over 3 billion in construction, including 2 LEED V4 Platinum projects. She supports materials transparency initiatives, including the Health Product Declaration Collaborative, the HPDC, technical committees, the USGBC Materials and Resources Technical Advisory Group, and the Mindful Materials Collaborative. Sheridan Johnson is a junior interior designer at HKS. She's passionate about material health, so she's in good company today with us. She works to increase awareness and bring the topic to the forefront in conversations with both clients and colleagues alike. She's a founding member of her college's IIDA chapter in 2018, and she's enjoyed formally joining the industry as a designer and has since been selected to join the IIDA Emerging Leaders class of 2020. So we're really glad Alison and Sheridan could join us today. So I'll tell you a little bit today about a background for materials health. I mean, I'm sure that some of you already know about this issue, but we find it's useful to begin any of our presentations with just the kind of the issue and the problems. So I'll tell you a little bit about the lab and a little about the issue, and then Catherine will introduce more information about the courses. So we established the lab at Parsons School of Design as part of the New School in New York in 2015. And we work to change design and construction to build healthier places for all people. To be able to do this work, we and our partners are funded by grants from the JPB Foundation. See, one of our partners there is the Health Product Declaration Collaborative that we've already talked about. At HML, we work with a broad range of experts exploring the relationships between human health and building materials. COVID has unfortunately revealed the inequities that were always implicit sometimes in our society and our places, but in the systems in which we work, particularly for communities that are now at compounded risk from the chemicals in their environment and these other issues that are being exposed in these broken systems. In our work, we consider how the design, construction, and production of our cities impacts human health and the planet throughout the ecosystem. It's very important for us to consider every aspect of this cycle, this system in our work. Construction materials in the current system impact human health through their processing, impacting the immediate fence line neighbors, consuming large amounts of energy, and adding significant amounts of carbon dioxide into the environment. In use, which is the focus of a lot of our work, these products emit hazardous toxics into the interior and exterior environments. Our bad decisions as architects and designers, as consumers, as developers, as everyone who is involved in the kind of material world have seriously impacted the entire ecosystem. And we all need to start making better materials decisions today. Materials that are used to make our cities are becoming part of our biology, of our biological systems. These materials shed and release chemicals into our environments, which are then absorbed into our bodies. We know we spend at least 90% of our lives indoors. And recently, some of us here in New York, for example, spend 100% of our time indoors. And that these indoor environments are filled with invisible chemical hazards, making indoor air 3 to 5 times more toxic than polluted outdoor air. And this is the surprising issue if you haven't seen this before. It's that many chemicals are not regulated in the US. Over 250 of the over 85,000 chemicals currently in use are tested. So a very small percentage are tested. And only 5, an even smaller amount of those 85,000 have been partially restricted by law. These chemicals are not benign, but are becoming part of our biology. We often think of products as static, but over time, materials break down and chemicals are released through these different processes, through off-gassing, as dust, or as the chemicals become unbound from their matrix and are released into the environment. Once these chemicals are in an interior space, we can breathe them, we may unfortunately eat them, and they can be absorbed through our skin. So how do these chemicals in our built environment impact our health? The research study called the Exposome Project has identified that genetics determines only 10% of human diseases, with the environment accounting for the other 90%. The exposome measures all the exposures, including chemical exposure, of an individual in their lifetime, and then how those exposures relate to health. We make the clear link between the often harmful chemicals contained in petrochemically based building products and human health issues, both inside of our buildings and outside, where they impact the health of the planet. We're committed to phasing out the embodied carbon in construction and materials, and look for materials that sequester, not emit carbon dioxide, and also have positive health impacts. The remaining 90% of the diseases that we succumb to are triggered by the social determinants of health, economic and social conditions that determine individual and group differences in health. So this is some of the implications of where we produce our chemicals. In the US, more than 2,500 sites that handle toxic chemicals are located in the flood-prone areas where poorer people are most likely to live. Here they're exposed to chemical contamination. Here people are exposed to chemical contamination during the usual routine manufacturing and catastrophically exposed during routine flooding. And here lies the roots of environmental racism as we look at the history of production of chemicals in the US. High rates of COVID are located in the same underserved and marginalized communities and are linked to the decades of environmental and systemic racism. So here we see the compounding influence of degraded neighborhoods that suffer exposure to chemicals, suffer routine exposure to chemicals, and also the kind of neglect and abandonment that many parts of the cities in the US, towns in the US have suffered over time, and how that increases the vulnerability of those residents in those communities to viruses like COVID. So it's critical that we build healthier, more resilient communities with our partners working on the ground in communities across the country, so that we can dramatically reduce people's exposure to harmful chemicals and realize that these are a public health priority to reduce a range of human diseases. As architects, designers, developers, and consumers, we have an important role to make change in our industry. And these are the sources of exposure in our own places. This very benign looking home office, sofa, desk. As we look around us, we should imagine exactly how we're being exposed to chemicals from the common building products typically made. These common building products are typically made from a wide range of hazardous chemicals that can cause cancer, asthma, or impact fertility, and many of which are made of petrochemicals or contain substances that are harmful to human health. But in the US, it's difficult to know the contents of the products that we live with. We do know what's inside of food products. If any of you have heard any of us present before, we typically use this Dorito packet because we know that they're listed on the side of the Doritos are the contents of that particular product. But this is not the case with building products. We need chemical ingredient transparency, and then based on content, we can make better choices and identify healthier alternatives. So we do that through a variety of different ways. We mentioned the Health Product Declaration Collaborative previously through HPDs. That's one method of knowing what's inside the products that we specify. So we know we need to make change, and we need to identify how we make that change. So for us, education is fundamental to that ability to make change in practice. And so Catherine's going to talk a little bit about our educational offerings and how you might be interested in participating in them. Thanks, Catherine.
Great. Thank you, Alison. So we offer two programs. The Healthy Materials and Sustainable Buildings is our most comprehensive offering. So that's the one at the top of the page here. And that you can access both of these through our website, so healthymaterialslab.org. This program rather has 4 courses in total, and it's a combined 23 and a half hours of content. It offers 18 AIA CEUs and 23.5 IDC CEUs. In it, we cover the basics of materials and human health. So what the issue is, as Alison had begun to kind of outline here, and how it impacts human health. The chemistry of the building products. This is a fundamental part of the program, and many of the graduates kind of rave about this section, surprisingly enough. And it explains why particular outcomes and health impacts are produced. In the second half of the program, we guide architects and designers through industry resources, certifications, and then help students build a framework for designing and specifying with healthier products. And in the very final section, we look at how architects and designers can execute a healthier practice. So here we have spoken with established designers who've been working in this area, and they share with us their lessons learned from their practices over the course of their work. And the other program, Healthy and Sustainable Affordable Housing, is geared at those working specifically in affordable housing. It's shortened to 7.5 hours and offers 6 AIA CEUs or 7.5 IDC CEUs. Both programs are delivered through the New Schools online learning platform, which is Canvas.
Next.
Please. So the accuracy is really important to us. So for all of the content, we've reached out to experts across all industries and professions that overlap with design and health. And we've asked them to share their knowledge, and it is they who deliver the content. So in the 4-course program, we have 58 experts who come from all of the fields listed here. Making healthier buildings for all is really central to our mission at Parsons Healthy Materials Lab. And we're particularly focused on the affordable housing market. So in the next slide, we have a short video from the Senior Program Office in the Environment Program at the JPB Foundation. This is Oganaya Dotson-Newman, and where she explains this in a really clear way. Thank you, Anna.
In my opinion, I think the way that we create change for communities is to like switch one of the words even in that sentence, is how do we create change together or with communities? And so I really do think that since we're also trying to navigate much of what we're talking about in terms of like power inequity, income inequity, race and class inequity, that working to create processes and to be very intentional about how we're thinking about moving forward and not just kind of like doing things for people, but doing things with people, can really create like really like beautiful, beautiful things. I think that oftentimes too, because it's a long kind of like tedious process, not everyone necessarily has the appetite for it. But oftentimes too, when you do this, you're creating opportunities for people to talk kind of like across their jargon, to talk across some of their lines. I think it also kind of like creates an opportunity to think about, you know, the protection of those that are most vulnerable. And there's always been, like, I used to play soccer for a long time, and my coach used to always say, like, we are only as strong as our weakest link. And so I think that kind of like team exercise should be applied to many things that we do. Those people that are most vulnerable in our society, if we work with them to find ways, I mean, within reason, to be able to like incorporate their ideas, their input, and to value, I think, at the very basic level, their humanity, we can figure out ways to work together to actually create like a collective, like, unit, building, community that kind of like serves all of us in a way that I think can be very helpful.
Great, thank you. So that's, as I said, from Oganaya, and this is a great example of some of the content on the courses where it's the speakers are very knowledgeable and they speak really frankly. In the next, we have another short expert from some of the.
In my opinion, I think the way that we.
Which is on the next slide. Perfect. So from guest speakers in the fourth course, which is all to do with executing a healthier project.
One of the biggest lessons that I see coming out of the Living Building Challenge is how do we completely change how we design buildings?
It is very important to ensure that every project team member is fully aware of the why behind prioritization of material health on these large projects.
We have to sort of shift the mentality from wanting a plaque to actually wanting a healthier environment for people.
Sustainability is not just a question about energy use. In addressing that, you bring up all of these much more human-oriented issues such as daylight and materials.
Thanks, Alison. And this is just one other very quick video that gives a kind of an overview of the entire program. Thank you, Alison. So that gives a sense of what we offer. We're super lucky today because we have two designers with us who have taken this 4-course program, and they've graciously agreed to be here to answer a couple of questions. While we're meeting them and having a quick chat with them, if you have any questions you want to pop in the questions and answers box, we'll be happy to answer them rather at the end. So again, welcome Alison and Sheridan. It's great to have you here. So you're both from HKS and you're based in the Dallas office. Maybe Alison, you could explain to us how this came about. What brought HKS to Parsons? How did that happen?
Yeah, well, thank you for inviting us here today to speak. So HKS is a large company and we have a professional development team as well as staff that produce a lot of internal education content. And this includes around sustainability and healthier materials, which is what my focus is in. But we were talking about some of that work that we were doing on an HPDC call, and Catherine reached out to us afterwards to tell us some more about the program. And I was sort of loosely aware that that this existed out there, but I didn't really know much about it. And knowing the quality of work that Parsons does, as well as seeing the syllabus for the program, we were really excited about exploring it further. So that session, we created a course of, I think there were probably about 25 people from HKS that joined. That was last fall, or fall 2019 was our first cohort. And since then, we've had, I think, 20 to 30 each session join from HKS.
That's great. No, you have been, you've been a great supporter of the program. And can you tell us a little bit about what it's been like from your end? What is the support internally that's offered to people taking the course?
Yeah, so every cohort has been really impressed with the quality of material that's covered, and they've really enjoyed the on-demand format for the course. So they're able to work it into their schedule as available, but everybody tells us that they want to put aside an hour or two each time to work on it, because it's just something that once you get into, like, you just want to stay and learn more. So that's something that we've heard back, but also to help support the course, we schedule 3 to 4 different discussion sessions over the term of the session with everybody who's in the course. And if they're available to join, then they join, and we talk about, you know, everything from how the course is going, what they are learning, and what's really kind of resonating and sticking with them. Talk about additional tools that we have at HKS or other resources. There have been times when people have really enjoyed certain speakers, and we provided other recordings of them to learn more about that session or subject, for example. And then also we talk about how they can approach this internally with the work that they're doing. So, you know, we tend to work on very large scale projects, and really making the connection to how this work happens on those types of projects is important to them. And talk about any other kind of struggles that they're having, either they're with clients or with team members that they're working with, to make sure that they continue to support healthy materials on the projects that they're working on.
That's great. That's great. Based on almost 100 people in your firm having gone through the program, who do you think should sign up?
Yeah, so we are, I think we're about 1,350 employees internationally. So that's a good chunk of people, right? And so we support everybody taking the course. So it's open to anybody. That first session was sort of a word of mouth solicitation to figure out who we would be a good candidate to sign up. But since then, we announce it within the firm through emails, as well as, you know, there's different huddle kind of discussions and updates that people learn about it. And then other groups, we were always getting out the word about this as an option. And so, you know, we have interior designers and architects, of course, who are taking it, but it's not limited to just kind of those design professionals. There's sustainability staff, such as myself. We have nurses who are part of our healthcare planning team that have taken it, people from our practice technology, and of course, construction administrators, or people who do construction administration work, of course, who do it as well. You know, it's really important that the whole team, that everybody throughout the whole process of the design work understands these issues and are able to communicate this to their clients and to the teams and to, you know, our collaborators and consultants as well. So we support everybody to take it. And it's also not limited to maybe entry level staff. So we have everybody from entry level up through principals and within the firm who take it. And every session, we have sort of that diverse group. And the other thing is that we are an international firm. So we have had a lot of participations from some of our international offices, in particular, New Delhi and Singapore, but the other offices as well.
Great, thank you so much. That's really good to know. And it is one thing that we noticed too, as your team members were coming on board, that they were across all offices, countries, and then levels, like from principals to junior designers, which is a perfect place then to introduce Sheridan and to ask you a couple of questions, maybe Sheridan. And what was your interest then, or how did you come about discovering about the program, and what provoked you to take it?
Absolutely. I joined HKS a year and a half ago, and I had previous internship experience in the industry, but I'm generally new. And so I immediately felt like I was entering a whole new world of dialogue and vocabulary and jargon that I wasn't quite familiar with. So I felt that there were a lot of gaps from my education, which was fantastic, of design, that I still wanted to expand upon. I felt that I graduated and I was done learning, I was ready to do everything. And then I quickly realized I needed a little more education. And so I was eager to find as many different opportunities as possible to help fill in those gaps, and things like becoming a lead GA, obtaining that certification. Those were very useful in explaining the importance of different sustainability initiatives to me. But they weren't as clear of how I could be involved and input those methodologies into my practice if that project I was working on at that time, say, wasn't pursuing those different certifications. And that was one of the first things that happened to me, was I was put on a large lead project that I actually am still working on with Allison. And so I was beginning to select materials according to certain criteria that I wasn't familiar with. And I quickly wanted to become familiar not only with that baseline, but with what was possible from there. So taking the course as a younger individual, newer to the industry, I think it was incredibly useful for me to build a vocabulary, but it also helped me look ahead at the trajectory of my career and how I can not only enjoy my work, but find more purpose in it, to not meet the bare minimum of what is asked of me, but to exceed that. And I think about it frequently is when they talk in healthcare design of parents being overwhelmed at hospitals, and sometimes children are the one who are able to see the signs and help their parents get to the right places. I'm thrilled that so many people at different levels at HKS have taken the time to take the course, but I also felt as a junior designer, I had a bit more time. And so for principals around me or different individuals who haven't yet had that first opportunity to take the course, I'm now a voice they can turn to, and it's allowed me to help explain it and fill in some of those gaps for them, and as well as changing the status quo. My first couple months at the office before we moved home, I sat next to an architect who had 40 years of experience. And so he was a great repertoire of knowledge of how things get done. But I was able to start poking in some thoughts of here and then, things are changing, and we really want to make sure we're on the right side of this, because material health is happening, so we can be at the forefront of it, or we can be dragged along later. And I really wanted to be at the forefront of it.
That's great. That's really great. And it's great to hear how it works within the office. Mm-hmm. And that's fantastic. And how has it impacted your work directly? Because you work in commercial interiors, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. So it's really changed my work in a few ways. And I think it's really just getting the ball rolling of what I would like for it to do, of the complete transformation of everything that's possible. But in my main interactions with sales representatives of different companies, that's a primary one. As even a junior designer, that I'm able to affect great change. Just yesterday in a presentation, we were asked if we had any questions, and I was able to start establishing the importance of material health to the sales representative, who mentioned that they would take that request back to the rest of their company. And so it really gives me a strength and encouragement that I have power as a designer to help shape the future of the market and the industry as a whole. Inquiring about material health really should be just like we would inquire about costs or lead times or anything. And it's not difficult to do when we're already demanding so much of our wonderful reps, but you need to know it before you can do it. So it's helped me in that way primarily. Additionally, with my coworkers, I've been given, like I said, that new knowledge and vocabulary to be of assistance to them. If they are very curious about it, but not sure where to get started, I'm an easy bridge into the topic so that they can see the importance of it, and then I can get them started on the resources available to them, because there are so many, but it can seem overwhelming if you haven't had the exposure thus far. Additionally, there are a lot of myths out there and half-truths. And so you kind of need a few different people here and there. It's keeping their ear out to the wind to say, wait, there's more to this than what you've heard, or to get someone started on the right questions to ask. And then lastly, with clients, being in commercial interiors, I get to see and am privy to a lot of the business of my clients and what their bottom line is. And so I've been able to start working this into my relationships with them and helping them understand we can affect their bottom line and help them understand that this material health and integrating this into our design process can support the work they do, which is incredibly important when, especially this year, we've learned the value of health, and that health is wealth. And so if we can manage to affect that, I think it's important on every project scale across industries. But when we think of the equity that was mentioned earlier, when I think about occupants who come into the offices that I design, they may not have a healthy or suitable environment with well-procured materials in the rest of their day. And in a day and age when we did spend most of our time at an office, I wanted to ensure that I could be supporting an environment for them that at least a portion of their time was in a protected space where their priorities were put first. And hopefully that will expand to all aspects of their day. But that is one indoor environment I know that they would likely spend a lot of time in, hands-on, that I could increase the value of for them.
Yeah, no, great. And if there was one kind of major takeaway that you had from the program, what might that be, Sheridan?
Yeah. Entering the industry, the appeal of design really hinged on, for me, beauty. So many beautiful designs and the opportunity to really make something. But for me, what's changed about that is the importance of performance. You don't want a surface or shallow design. You want something that's truly there, and not a glass house that if you throw rocks at it, it's not smoke and mirrors behind. I think quality and quantity there, when you start to look at it, that performance is just so important in creating a lasting and impactful design and designing for true impact and transformation. So to me, material health is a key part of that performance metric. And so that was the main thing for me. It really changed the way I'm looking at design and how I want to change the way I bring everyone with me to the table to discuss design, to make sure that we can keep that at the forefront.
And I just want to ask you too, if you decide to kind of change your kind of area of interest in work, you feel confident that what you've learned in the program that you can transfer it to other programs?
Yes, absolutely. I think too, what it's done is given me a framework for discussing all kinds of issues actually with everyone on a project team. I think that we can feel very comfortable with our designers and maybe not know how to get our designs across when we're talking to superintendents or things. And the course I really appreciated taught me the skill of getting everyone on the same page and inspired towards the same common goal. And that taught leadership skills and communication skills, which are crucial to any design. But I think that in any sector, if you're a designer or an architect, you have to get the things built somehow. And there's a very physical nature to that. And material health inevitably is a key component, especially in interiors. I think there's a misconception that it's all about the building materials and the core and shell. But we know that's not the case. We know that the interior materials are just as important. And so that would be the case in any environment.
Great. I want to ask you one final question, but it ties back into something that Alison had said about the course bin, how it's delivered and it's self-paced. That was really important to us because both Alison Mears and myself are both practicing. Alison's an architect and I'm an interior designer. So we know how busy everybody is and how, so it was really important that it could be self-paced. And even though there are almost 24 hours of content, it's manageable in a much shorter period of time, but you can dip in and dip out of it at your pace. Is there anything that either of you might say to somebody who's thinking, I'd really love to do this, but I just don't have the time, or I can't commit to it, or, maybe next year or next semester?
I think for me, I've been given a lot of extra time into my life working from home. So that's a gift that I was able to do it. But I think as much as we all are all busy individuals, the time it's given me back into my practice too, understanding and having the resources available, you will end up working with healthy materials. And if you learn it now, you're ready to go for the rest of your career, versus being faced with a project or client who starts asking you to do these things and spinning your wheels in the mud. So you will spend the time one way or another. I would encourage everyone to look at how they could spend it now and invest in it in a protected time when you're deciding to do it on your own. I think being self-paced, if you decide to do it Sunday morning first thing, you get a lot more out of it than being forced into any other schedule. Maybe that's the last 3 Sundays before the end of the course, but you'll still get them done. I think that it being on your own schedule will make you appreciate it more. And I would just look at it as something that needs to happen. And so appreciate that you get to make it happen on your own time. What do you think, Allison?
Well, I mean, you said that so well. I don't really want to follow it. But, yeah, I mean, I think it averages out to be about 90 minutes per week. And I think most of us can we can find that time, especially with something that is self-paced, that you can figure out when is a good time for you to make that commitment. You know, and maybe you do a lot in 1 week, and then another week, because of the flexibility, you don't have to do as much because you know your own schedule and your own project schedule. We are all busy. The other thing is, Catherine can attest to this, that we always reach out and are like, wait a minute, when is the deadline again? When do we need to be done? Because we are all designers and are really kind of driven by knowing what that deadline is. That, you know, we know that we can get things done by that point in time. It's a lot easier if we plan for it in advance.
Great. I have a question. Can I jump in with a question, Catherine? It was
Sure.
so great to hear from both of you, Allison and Sheridan, about your experiences, and then when you took from the courses and started to implement it in your practice. I have a question about the clients and others that you interact with, and whether you're finding one of two things, or maybe both, whether you're finding clients asking you to start considering material health as part of the project, or you're finding that clients or others are pushing back when you introduce this topic into projects.
So I work on a lot of projects, and they tend to be more sustainability focused. So that's sort of the first filter, I guess, through those clients that I'm primarily speaking with. But they, you know, I think they have kind of one of two attitudes. One is, yes, we want to do this, and we want you to teach us and tell us more about it so that we can feed it back into the work that we're doing. Or the other attitude is, of course you're doing that. Like, why aren't you doing that? Why are you even really talking about it with us? Because that's our expectation. So that's really what I tend to see with the clients that I'm working with.
Mm-hmm. I am still encountering this, and I'm looking forward to getting the opportunity to discuss it more with clients. But one thing I noticed quickly was that I don't bring it to the table as an option, just as I wouldn't bring an option of design that I wasn't pleased with, because in my experience, that tends to be the option that would be selected, and it's always like, dang. But I think to bring it and to bring awareness, I've had a few clients that one actually said to me, we're not tree huggers, just do what you have to do. And I thought, that's very interesting. Don't we all care about the planet? But I knew what they were concerned about. They were concerned about our project fees going up, or what the cost was going to be to them. They didn't see the value. So I explained the value. And then at the end of it, we were all on the same page, but they weren't as ready to be engaged. Another client never brought it up to us, but I discovered upon bringing the conversation to them that they actually had a company-wide sustainability commitment that they hadn't thought would necessarily apply to the project itself, but that we were able to engage material health through. And then that really was a value proposition for them to engage with what their company was doing as a whole. And I think our stakeholders that we communicated with were looking forward to taking that information back to their peers and supervisors and say, look how we've engaged with our company goals through this project in a way that they never maybe thought possible originally. But I think it goes both ways. And I think the more we discuss it, when we get repeat clients or repeat work or those different opportunities, it will begin to be more and more. And I look forward to the conversations where everybody is expecting it and looking to optimize it more so than thought possible previously.
Super interesting. Thank you.
We have a question from somebody who is watching in, and it just goes back to the course structure and the timeline and the schedule basically. And the question is to speak about the course structure and what people can expect. So it is self-paced, so it just means you can dip in and dip out at any point within the 15-week structure, so it aligns with the university semester system. There's no homework per se. You have to do a series of quizzes along the way, and then once you get 100, you have to reach 100 in each of the quizzes, it will unlock the next section. So that kind of determines how quickly you go through it. The quizzes aren't difficult. It's just to kind of reiterate Sheridan and Alison, you remember, it's just to reinforce stuff that was covered earlier. Then along with all the content is delivered by video, so some of the excerpts you have seen earlier. And then there will be supplemental materials. So we'll have created takeaways that can be downloaded and then that you can keep at your desk or in a folder on your desktop. And there are also other resources that you can refer to that we've sort of selected. And everything that we've kind of selected is kind of is from a trusted resource. So we stand behind all of those because that's a really important part of it. The course ends at the end of the semester, and in this case, it will be like the 19th of December, and that's a hard finish. We're aligned with the university, so we
of May. Catherine, I think you said December.
For this session.
Oh, for this session, the current session.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so then, it'll end in May for the spring session. And there's not much flexibility there. But what you can do is for 60 days after the semester ends, so in this case, it will bring us up to February, or the spring session will then bring you up to July. You're able to go back in and review material. You can download any of the resources at that point. So while you have to get through the content up to the end date, you don't have to feel rushed about gathering everything. The only point to remember is that in that 60 days, you only have access to what you previously viewed. So if you didn't get through all the quizzes, if you didn't unlock every section, you won't get access to every section. So I hope that answers your question.
I think the other thing to note is that while we would like it to be freely available to enroll throughout the year, there are only these 3 opportunities to enroll. So for the spring, it's between now and the beginning of February, and then there's a summer session, and then there's a fall session. So there's a small window where you can enroll, and then that enrollment shuts down.
Yeah. There are a lot of people saying thank you, which is great. So we hope you'll be able to join in. Ava, were there questions from any of the people watching via Facebook?
No, there were.
Okay, well, that was really great. Is there anything else, Alison and Sheridan, that you'd like to add?
I mean, I think everybody online should sign up. I think it's a really great educational opportunity, and I think that they find a lot of value in it and support the type of work that they're doing. So I would encourage for everybody to sign up.
Great.
That's lovely.
Thank you. And I just have one final thing to say. It's in your firm, there's no sort of buy-in. Everybody, and the leadership has been on board, and how is there any way that is there any recommendations you have for people who might be a little reluctant for their teams to give up the time?
Well, we did sort of, I guess, test the course. I mean, we knew that it would be a great course, that before we really brought it widely to the firm, we wanted to go through it and be able to speak to the quality of the content that was in it. And so I think that that might be a way for other firms to have a similar approach, is that they have some sort of little test group that that checks it out, and then we'll be better equipped to sell this to the firm as a whole.
Great. Thank you both. If anybody has another question, and if you want to reach out to us directly, you can at healthymaterialslab.org, or my email address is cmurphy@newschool.edu, and we'll be more than happy to answer any questions you have. Registration is open. It opened yesterday, and it will be open through February 2nd. The courses themselves will open in January, on January 19th, but registration will be open through December and January. So there's still time, but you know, as Alison and Sheridan would say, kind of, you know, do it sooner rather than later. So we look forward to having a lot of you on board next semester.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Alison, Sheridan, for your comments. That was great. And thank you all for joining us today. Thanks, Catherine.
Thank you, Alison. Okay. Bye.
Bye now.
Everyone.